We got a win. It wasn't the win that we wanted, but it is a win nonetheless. And I want people to understand that because there are a lot of videos out right now acting like the world is falling apart and that we totally got screwed. We did get a little screwed. But again, we also got a win. What am I talking about? The Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. The big beautiful bill did pass. The Senate version passed the House. It will now go to President Trump's desk and get signed into law. And it passed by July 4th, like they wanted it to. Unfortunately, we did not get the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act in the full form that we wanted. What we got instead is a $0 tax stamp on suppressors, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and AOWs, any other weapons. Now, we still have all of the unconstitutional registration requirements and everything else that was involved in the NFA before, but now we don't have a $200 tax stamp. But this is more of a win than everyone's telling you it is. One thing that I think happens a lot in the gun community, and especially in the Second Amendment space, is that people want all or nothing. In fact, I put out a short last week about that. Would you guys rather, get the $0 tax stamp or, push for full Short Act, Hearing Protection Act, get everything off the NFA, or nothing at all? And the vast majority of people were all or nothing. And if you watch any of the other, YouTubers channels right now, that's what they're all saying too, that we just totally got screwed by the Republicans, which we did. I mean, to a large extent, they're right. But at the same time, we have to take our wins when we get them. And honestly, I would rather pay $200 for a tax. I would rather pay $0 for a tax stamp than $200. Things are going to be better now than they were before this bill was passed. Although marginally better rather than just incredibly better like we were hoping that they would be. Now, I for one, and you guys know this if you've been following my videos lately, I was very confident that we were going to pass the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. I was too over optimistic, and because I thought that it was the right thing to happen, then I thought that it would happen. And unfortunately, that is not how politics works. And to be quite honest, this is the first time in my life at 42 years old that I've paid this much attention to a reconciliation bill and the process. And I didn't realize before this that the Senate parliamentarian could basically just pick apart a bill and that all the Republicans who have the majority in both houses of Congress would just go along with her recommendations without even putting up a fight. That honestly surprised me quite a bit. I figured that these things would stay in the bill because it is a budget reconciliation bill. It has to do with taxes and with budget. Well, what is the NFA if not a tax? Literally, what you pay $200 for is a tax stamp. And the, in my opinion, illegal registry that goes along with it, well, that is only supposed to be there to keep track of the tax paid. But that is also going to help us going forward here. What do I mean by that? Well, now that there's a $0 tax, there is no tax paid to keep track of in the NFA registry. So what does the NFA become now? Well, it becomes just a registry, which is unconstitutional and illegal. In fact, the only way that the NFA has been upheld is because it was upheld as being constitutional because it is a tax. If it's not a tax, then it is no longer constitutional. Now it's just an illegal gun registry. And so I do think that this win is bigger than just getting a $0 tax. But at the same time, in the meantime, a $0 tax is still a win. I've gotten 3 suppressors very recently. If I didn't have to pay tax stamps on any of them, that would have saved me $600. $600 could buy me another suppressor. This video is sponsored by Aura. the very best way to support Sawtooth Tactical, my YouTube channel, which is mostly demonetized, is by signing up for Aura. And with the money that you save on a $200 tax stamp, if it's $0, you can afford Aura for an entire year. Aura is only $12 a month, and you get all of your online security with it. All of it. The biggest one, like I always say, to me is the data broker removal part, where they scour the entire internet and the dark web, and they find anywhere where your data has been leaked, and they submit opt-out requests on your behalf to the data brokers that are selling your information to scammers and spammers. And then you don't get scam calls, and you don't get spam and stuff anymore in your email, your phone, or anywhere else. I honestly, that's my favorite part of it. I've been using it for over a year, and I really, really appreciate that. And they do that for just $12 a month. But besides that, you get all this other stuff for that same $12. You get a VPN. A VPN means that it's a virtual private network. You can browse the internet safely, anonymously, securely. Pretty sweet. They have scam call protection. They have your antivirus software, your password manager if you choose to use it, parental controls, home title monitoring, literally everything that is your online security, all in this one thing, $12 a month. Try it out absolutely free though by using my link, aura.com/sawtooth-tactical, and you get 14 days, 2 weeks to see if you like it or not. There's nothing to lose, so you might as well, and it really helps out the channel. Again, 2 weeks, 14 days, absolutely free at aura.com/sawtooth-tactical. Now, I'm not sure why everyone seems to be acting like getting a $0 tax stamp as opposed to $200 is a loss. That is a win. Things are, again, better after the passage of this bill than they were before. We've been paying $200 for tax stamps for decades. $0 is a big deal. Honestly, to me, you build a new AR. Well, to pay an extra $200 to put a stock on it versus a brace has always seemed very ridiculous to me. You buy a suppressor. It costs $600 to $1,200. You add $200 more to it, that makes that suppressor significantly more expensive, especially when you talk about something like a rimfire can that only costs a couple $100 anyway. You almost double the price when you have to add a tax stamp to it. So to me, $0 for a tax stamp is a big deal. And it kind of bothers me that everybody acts like it's not. Now, of course, it would be much, much better if we got everything taken off the NFA like we thought was going to happen, or like we at least hoped was going to happen. I got a lot of comments from a lot of you guys saying this will never pass, they'll never let this happen. Turns out you were absolutely right. I was wrong. I thought it would pass the way that it should have, and it didn't. But hear me out here. I do think that we have a chance to still get that to happen. Now, it's a chance that it's going to take some time, and of course it's not a sure thing, because it has to go to the Supreme Court in order for it to happen. But before the ad break there, I was talking about the fact that the NFA has only been upheld as constitutional because it is a tax. Well, if there is no tax, then it's not a tax, right? I mean, a $0 tax, is that really a tax? I mean, logically, to me, it's absolutely not. So then what is it? It's all it really is a registration. It's a list. It's illegal. It is unconstitutional and illegal for the ATF to keep and maintain a gun registry, which is what the NFA is. And we've all known this for a long time. But without the tax, then that's all it is. What are you getting a tax stamp for if not for paying the tax? That tax stamp is attached to the serial number of the firearm or suppressor, which a suppressor is considered a firearm for the purposes of the NFA. That's what your tax stamp is. It's literally just to keep track of the fact that you paid the $200 tax. And that's how they've maintained that it is constitutional. So without that tax, it is unconstitutional. Now, GOA, Gun Owners of America, is already in the process of starting a lawsuit to bring this to the courts. like I said, it will have to end up at the Supreme Court. And the problem there is that the Supreme Court, this Supreme Court, as of recently, has not been very interested in taking up Second Amendment cases. So that's the problem, is we need them to grant certiorari on this case and actually hear it. But if they do, and we do have right now a conservative majority in the Supreme Court, if they do, I don't see any way how they can uphold the NFA, the National Firearms Act, as constitutional. Again, I'm specifically referring to the parts of the NFA that have to do with suppressors, with short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns, and AOWs, because destructive devices and machine guns are still taxed at that $200 price point. So those technically still follow the guidelines that have been set, that have been upheld as constitutional under the law. But the rest of this stuff doesn't anymore. It's just an illegal gun registry. And so that is our big chance now. That is a definite possibility. It's a possibility that might take some time, and it's a possibility that might not even make it to the Supreme Court. But if it does, I do believe that we have a good chance there of actually getting this stuff off the NFA registry eventually. Now, there are some other things that I want to address here. This is $0 tax stamp. When does this take effect? It's not immediately. Like if you go out and buy a suppressor right now, or put together an SBR, you're still going to pay $200. It goes into effect, I think it was 90 days after the next quarter, basically January 1st, 2026 is what it equates to. So starting next year is when the $0 tax stamps will go into effect. Now this could hurt the suppressor industry quite a bit, to be honest, because a lot of people, and I've said this before, I get comments all the time, I'll buy a suppressor when I don't have to give the government $200 of my hard-earned money. So all of those people will probably wait until 2026 now to buy a suppressor. Now those people maybe weren't buying suppressors already anyway, so maybe this doesn't hurt the suppressor industry. Maybe they just keep selling them to the people that have been willing to pay $200 all along. But I think that a lot of people, if they know that coming soon, they won't have to pay $200 for their tax stamp, they might just wait until they can save $200. I mean, people wait for sales all the time. This is 4th of July weekend, I'm filming this. Geisley does these big sales around every holiday, especially 4th of July. And, their stuff sells like crazy because people want to save a buck. And if they can save 200 of those bucks, they're gonna do it. So we'll see what that does. Now, this is another big thing I keep hearing all of a sudden, is everybody says, well, all the suppressor manufacturers are just going to raise their prices by $200 to make up for it. I don't really understand the logic there as to why they would do that. Everybody's like, well, they're not just going to leave the $200 on the table. That $200 never went to the manufacturers or the distributors or the gun shops. Anyway, it went to the government. And I just don't see it. All the manufacturers all at once are going to raise their prices by $200 because if only some of them did it, they're not going to be able to compete with the ones that didn't. I can't imagine that they all get together in a room and go, hey, we're going to jack our prices up now and just screw over the community that we sell our products to. I don't really see that. Now, the laws of supply and demand do apply here. And so, if all of a sudden the demand outpaces supply by a significant margin when the $0 tax stamp takes effect, well, yes, prices do go up when there's less supply and more demand. That is true. I do think that'll eventually level off, so we'll see what happens there. The other one that I keep seeing is that, well, now that we've shown that we can change the amount of the tax stamp in a reconciliation bill, now the Democrats are going to do that when they're in power, and our $0 tax stamp is going to become a $5,000 tax stamp or a $20,000 tax stamp, and it's going to do exactly what it was meant to do when the NFA was first put into place, where it was meant to be prohibitively expensive, as $200 back then, when adjusted for inflation, is like $5,300 now or something like that. So, now all of a sudden, all these Democrats realize, after debating this whole NFA thing, that the $200 tax stamp never changed with inflation. And of course, they don't want us to have things like suppressors and SBRs. And so as soon as they are in power, they will change that $0 tax stamp to, thousands of dollars and price us all out of NFA items again. I see the logic there, and I guess that could probably happen. For one thing, what's kept them from doing that for the last 91 years? They could have, but again, I think the theory is that they just didn't know that they could until now, and we've showed them that we can change that amount of tax stamp in a reconciliation bill. So now, to get us back and to, erase Donald Trump's agenda, that they're just gonna, do that to us. Another good reason, hopefully, that this thing does go to the Supreme Court first and is proven that without the tax that it's unconstitutional and these are taken off the NFA, so then they can't do that, hopefully, at that point. All I know is that we cannot predict the future. I would not have predicted that what happened during this reconciliation process. It did surprise me how close we got to getting these things off the NFA. It's the closest I've ever seen in my entire life. And I was very excited about it. Unfortunately, it did not turn out the way that I hoped and that many people hoped. But I think it turned out better than a lot of people expected. I think most people thought that even the $0 tax stamp was impossible because most people, of course, thought that the government wouldn't give up that revenue. We are doing record suppressor sales and NFA items now compared to any time in history. NFA items used to be something that were very rare. And now, most people that are, passionate about firearms own suppressors or SBRs or both. I've got a bunch of suppressed SBRs behind me. That's what I like. Those are my favorite guns. And each one of those represents a $200 tax stamp, $200 to the government. All those NFA items added up, millions of them times $200, is a lot of revenue for the government. And you know what? They did give it up. We got a $0 tax stamp now on all this stuff. I do think that we need to celebrate that win. Now, don't take your eye off the prize. Of course, we want to work on getting this stuff completely off of the NFA, and that is the next step, and GOA is already taking the lead on that, which I think is awesome. But at the same time, a year ago, I would have been really excited to find out that tax stamps were free versus $200. And just because we didn't get everything we wanted, I think doesn't mean that we shouldn't celebrate what we did get. To someone like me that really likes NFA items, suppressors, and short-barreled rifles, a $0 tax stamp could save me a lot of money. And I'm sure many of you as well. And I think that that is overall a good thing. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you agree with me, or do you think that this is totally rotten and, can't believe that we didn't get the HPA and the Short Act in their full form? Because I agree with that. I think that that really sucks, and it shows how flawed our system is, because we should have gotten that. But at the same time, realistically, man, we did get a win. A $0 tax stamp is better than a $200 tax stamp. But again, let me know if you agree or not in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like. Make sure you subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.